Hello, and welcome to Unweaving the Wheel, a podcast where we analyze and react to the episodes of Amazon Prime's Wheel of Time.
Intro music by Brandon Tolley.
I'm Z, and I haven't read The Wheel of Time.
I'm Gavin, and I've read The Wheel of Time multiple times and know way too much about it.
We're going to do a mostly spoiler-free discussion of the episode, hopefully gleaning some interesting notes and connections from my point of view and from Gavin's extensive knowledge. Spoilers will be contained within the episode, but world building and non-spoiler book notes from Gavin will be discussed, with a more in-depth book comparison and dive near the end of the episode. Character deaths in future episodes, the series ending, or who the Dragon Reborn is won't be spoiled. This is episode 3, A Place of Safety.
What?
So quick recap. In this episode, we have Nynaeve being a total badass, as she is.
Yeah, we get a recap of what happened to Nynaeve after she got dragged off.
Yes, we have Perrin and Egwene getting pushed to some travelers by the wolves. Rand and Matt find a small mining town and begin working at the local tavern to earn enough to sleep and eat, and Lan worries about Moraine and tries to find help. We also get to meet Tom, one of Gav's favorite characters.
Oh, Tom Maryland is so good. He's one of the best boys.
Yeah. So overall, my view on the episode is I really liked the lore this episode gave in very subtle, nice ways. It kind of gives us the different terrains of the world, so it kind of opens up the 3 different cardinal directions everyone ended up going in. You have the forest with Lan, Moraine, and Nynaeve. You have the kind of sort of plain, deserty. It's not really a desert, but like valley plains.
You have like a plateau of sorts.
A plateau for Egwene and Perrin, and then Rand and Matt end up in a mountainous river mining area. It was really cool seeing all those. I did feel a little bit like I was playing Minecraft and found a boundary between 3 different biomes.
Now, an interesting thing about that you can take note of, the breaking of the world was not only metaphorical. It changed the entire landscape of the world. So, wow. Yeah, so literal mountains and valleys were formed, rivers were formed by the breaking of the world.
So it's literally Minecraft biomes. Got it.
Yeah, kinda. Like, that's a fair comparison.
I will say, hopefully, now being split up, they are all trying to get away from the Trollocs, and this will split the Trollocs' effort to get to all of them, and away from Voldemort Demogorgon. Though,
the eyeless, in case anyone doesn't know what Z is talking about.
I like Baldy Demogorgon. Anyway, we also have Mr. Needs of Visine chasing after them.
Yeah, we get another dream through Perrin.
Yes, but I actually really liked this episode because having them split up into pairs kind of let us spend a little more intimate time with them. So of all the episodes, this is the one where I started going, yeah, I know who these people are now.
A lot of character learning.
Yes.
Goes on.
Great look at the characters. It also was a very sassy episode. Nynaeve is sassy to Lan. Lan is sassy to Nynaeve. Matt is sassy to Rand. Rand is sassy about Matt. And the barmaid is sassy to Matt. Sass, 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 sass. So it was kind of nice seeing them out of their element, but also kind of being humorous about it.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't all doom
Egwene
and
and
gloom.
Perrin are just mainly focused on not getting eaten by wolves. They do crack a joke or two, though.
It's true. They weren't very sassy. But to be fair, at the beginning of the episode, everything kind of switches nicely because at the beginning of the episode, Perrin and Egwene appear to be the ones who are in danger because they've got the wolves chasing after them.
Yeah,
Um,
they're the two that seem uh in imminent danger.
yeah, and then near the end, that kind of switches, and everyone else seems to be in danger, but Egwene and Perrin are fine.
Yeah, there's an interesting change of events.
Yeah, it's a nice little flip. Um, we do get to see Rand in a bit of a better light. You know, he does better without micromanagement.
Yeah, he works much better in he's way more comfortable chopping wood than all this Aes Sedai mess.
Yeah, he's very much like, oh, I just need to work, do my job, get a place to sleep, then I'll figure out how to find Egwene again.
Yep.
And you kind of see like he is a hard worker, he's stubborn and bullheaded, but he wants to reunite with his friends. He still hates the Aes
Yeah.
Sedai, but it's at
He's an
least better.
honest good man, but you know, he has his skepticisms and his angers.
Yeah. But it was interesting because now we get to see Matt and his character flaws.
Yeah,
So
Matt's kind of a shithead in
in
this
this
episode.
yeah, they kind of flipped. Rand starts kind of being a little more likable, and Matt starts kind of grinding your gears a little. I will say it was interesting to watch though because you see that he's really out of his element. Like Rand is out of his element, but at least he's in a town. He knows how this works. Whereas with Matt, because it's not his town, he gets really insecure
Yeah, he
and
doesn't really know what to do.
he doesn't know what to do, and his pride gets wounded when he gets pickpocketed. Because before that, he was fine, and then he gets pickpocketed, and he's like, "I'm supposed to be the rapscallion." Rah, rah, rah.
He kind of gets like double pickpocketed
Yeah, he
because
does.
he gets pickpocketed by some rando in the tavern, and then Tom Maryland pickpockets that pickpocket and then flaunts it
Yes.
in front of
So
Matt,
he gets a
and
little
then doesn't give
humiliated.
it back to him.
Yeah. He gets humiliated publicly and wounds his pride. Though I will say, like, eventually he kind of finishes sulking and is like, "All right, I'll work and deliver."
He works through it a little bit.
I through a little. It's still like it still shows up though because his pragmaticism when he gets insecure and feels out of his element, his pragmaticism kind of feeds into an anxiety almost and feeds
Yeah,
into his insecurity because then he starts going like none of I'm not the dragon. I just want to go home, you know. And I want to get back to my sisters. Just, he's obviously always very like prioritizing his family and especially his sisters. But he's
I,
pretty much I've had enough of this. It's probably Egwene or someone else, but it's not me. I'm just going home.
I do appreciate that that character storyline of that he's kind of a shithead and a rapscallion, but he's willing to do anything to get back to his sisters.
Yeah.
Kind of deal where it's like he's kind of an asshole, but he's kind of an asshole because he just wants to protect his sisters.
Yeah. I really
So
like
it's
that.
like I think that's an admirable trait, even though he does shitty things.
Yeah, and like he obviously has other little flaws like being a kleptomaniac, but I also thought it was
It's
interesting
not a
because
flaw, it's a hobby. A profitable one.
I thought it was interesting to have one of the characters directly go, dude, it's not going to be me. You
Yeah,
know?
just outright denying that like it's not possible, it couldn't possibly be me.
Yeah. So like it shows a level of insecurity from him where he's like, I can't be the main character. I'm not important enough. I'm
Yeah,
just
there's
the
like a
town's
level of self-deprecation there of like I'm
yeah.
not important enough to be a part of this story.
Exactly. And that's like his push for going home. And then later in the episode, it gets confirmed like, no, dude, you are a potential. Um,
Yeah, it's like,
but
nah, you're still in this, whether you like it or not.
um, we get to meet Tom Maryland?
Yeah.
Nope.
So hit Maryland,
Oh,
like
okay.
almost like Maryland the state, but
Yeah,
like
no, that's where my brain was going, and I was like, is that right?
take off the D, and then there's a very like, so you know how people say like Mare land, and they kind of ignore that Y.
Hmm.
Subtly add that Y sound in, so like
Okay,
Marilyn,
got
like there's a in there. And also his first name, like everyone, it's Tom, but it's spelled Thom, so it's
it. Hmm.
Thum. But you say it quickly enough that it sounds like Tom.
Right. Uh,
Fun book fact early in the show. Sorry.
okay. Um, it was very interesting getting to see him and getting to meet him because you definitely I don't know how to say this, so I'm trying to get it all out and have it make sense.
Okay.
You get the sense that he is giving you I'm a fun, goofy bard, but because of the way it's kind of presented to you, so like that's the image he's projecting onto the society around him. But you, the viewer, get this kind of subtle, like, this guy knows more than he's letting on. You know? Like
Yeah.
he might be older, he might be have more of a story than we are being told, because it's very much presented like I'm just a bard going through the
Yeah,
storm.
he's just like he's like the funny guy that's actually very wise but does not let it on at all.
Exactly. Exactly
Which
the vibe I was getting.
he lets out a little bit because there's this weird kinship that he forms with Matt
Yeah, that was
towards the
cute.
end of the episode. And so some of that, like, kind of like, oh, I'm not really just a jokester and a singer. Like,
Hmm.
I've got shit going on too. Like, I've seen things, so I get it, kind of
Yeah.
deal.
And then you have, meanwhile, you've got Nynaeve showing back up and
Yep.
threatening Lan, and Lan being like, I'm gonna knock you out and tie you up for a minute until you're done trying to kill me.
And then also like the vague appreciation or being impressed by Nynaeve of
Mm.
like, a, how the fuck did you find me? And she's like, I tracked you. And he's like, how is that even possible? And
Mm, yeah.
then B, like, oh shit, you really were gonna kill me, weren't you?
Yeah.
Like I love that, like, you were actually gonna kill me. And that he's like kinda impressed by that.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
like,
a little like, oh, you really made it go for it. Cool. Like he's not scared because he knew she couldn't
like
kill him because he's a, more,
he's, yeah, he's the like highly skilled warrior
yeah, so
versus a wisdom.
a
Not
wisdom with a knife.
exact, yeah, not exactly an even fight
Yeah.
as it stands.
I just want to shout out to Nynaeve for playing Potion Craft.
Yeah, yeah, doing her wisdom
If
thing, that was cool to see.
yeah, but like I saw the like her grinding up the stuff, and I was like, oh, I've played this game before. Um,
And like I
Potion Craft.
appreciate the like learning a little bit more about Nynaeve's personality and Land's, because Land's personality has been kind of reserved
Mm-hmm.
up until this point, but then like you get to see him like being impressed by Nynaeve and trying to figure stuff out, and then you also start to see like the genuine worry for
Oh yeah,
Moraine. Like it's getting to the point where like now he's actually scared that she might
yeah.
die.
It's very interesting to like see that progression of
Yeah.
him and like see him start to open up just a little to Nynaeve about like, no, we need her alive.
Yeah.
Like she needs to stay alive.
And it's also
Um
like that situation of like, look, we may not like each other right now, but we need each other. Like,
yeah,
I need you to heal Moraine, and you need me and Moraine to find the others.
basically. Um,
I will say, so you know, we've talked about, you know, Rand and Matt in the town and not even land. So it's a weird thing with Perrin and Egwene,
mhm,
where ultimately, as far as like action and story progression, not a lot happens with them, but
yeah,
like interesting character developments happen. So they're being chased by the wolves, and we get this interesting moment where they finally find like a little bit of cover where they can rest for a moment, and we're trying to they're trying to build this fire, and it plays into what you were talking about last episode, where Perrin seems to have this desperate need to be a caretaker,
yeah,
because he's struggling so hard to get this fire lit and he's getting panicky. And then we
yeah,
also get this moment of where seemingly Egwene channels for the first time unaided by anyone else. She's actually the one who lights the fire.
yeah. And
um
Perrin even notices that. So I have a note on
yeah.
that at the very end of my episode that I want to bring up again. But
Okay.
uh yeah, kind of Perrin and Igraine, they kind of just and again we have the wolves coming to
It's
Perrin's
kind of
aid.
like in a, yeah, an extended chase scene that ends with like they find tracks that could possibly lead them to safety, and Egwene makes the offhanded comment of like, it's almost like they led us here.
Yeah, it's like they specifically chased us to this spot and then stopped. And they
Which is,
and it's not like with the city where it was so evil everything just stopped there. It was a like, cool, you made it.
yeah, they're like, oh, okay, like you
You
found it,
found it.
we're gonna go now.
Yep. See you later. We'll
Which
be
is
back.
an interesting follow up to what we talked about last time, is this interesting affinity that Perrin seems to have with wolves,
It's so
or
cute.
animals in general. Like there's this interesting connection there that
I have
is
another
not
note on
being
that.
explained, but it's obviously there.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of things happen. Like Perrin and Egwene, nothing really happens. They find the traveling troupe and they basically have a talk like, well, I guess we're staying with these guys for a minute because
Yeah,
fuck if we know what to do. Um, so I'm gonna put them aside for a minute.
yeah. I want to talk
'Cause,
about them more at the end of the episode because they're
yeah.
fun.
Um, but with Matt, he kind of gets flirty with the barmaid. Again, we kind of talked about his insecurities, but they're basically Matt wants to go home at this point. Rand wants to go east. Uh, and Matt is like, well, I need more money, so I saw that shiny rock on the dead guy that we saw hanging outside of town because they had, that they did the like, don't mess with this town, we kill people and string them up. Um,
Yeah, they basically have like a, instead of a hangman's noose, they have the cage.
yeah. And so Matt goes to steal that stuff and has a moment with Tom, and Tom is like, "It's
Yeah,
okay, bro, but help me bury him."
yeah. He had. There's actually, like, before he goes to do that, there's that interesting moment where Matt's talking about how he wants to get home to his family, and his face kind of gets dark, like he gets a really grim looking face, and he says, I have people who need me, so whatever I need to do, I'll beg, borrow, and steal to get home.
Mm,
And that's like a
yeah.
very, I think that's a very like a thing that speaks to Matt, like I mentioned earlier, that the like he may do shitty things, but it's for his sisters, of like, I'm gonna
And I
do what I have to do.
And I don't think it's really sunk in again because he's like, I'm not the dragon, I'm not the important one here. It hasn't sunk in with him yet, at this point in the episode at least, that going back to your sisters is the worst thing you could do for them.
Right.
So
It's
he's still
the whole
very
thing.
focused.
Yeah.
Um,
And then going back to what you were talking about, the moment with Tom and this is that moment where like Tom kind of shows his hand a little bit more of like, I'm not just the goofy gleeman. Like,
Yeah.
I know what you're going through. What is he says they're talking to Matt and they're kind of explaining to each other why they're both at that cage. And he's just
Yeah.
like, I need money to go home, so I figured I'd check his pockets. Maybe he had some. And Tom's just like, we've all had dark times before. And just
Desperate
like
mo We've all had
turns
desperate
away.
times.
Yeah, and just like turns away and lets him do his thing.
Yeah.
And then we also get, although a very morbid introduction, but we get an introduction to the Aiel, a culture of people from the Aiel Waste.
And I thought that this is a really good way to show how traveled Tom is and how
Yep.
like he talks about how the town basically killed the Aiel because he's an Aiel and they were like, he's dangerous.
Yeah, because they
And
didn't know any better.
so it kind of shows like he doesn't listen to stereotypes. He's obviously well traveled. He can recognize someone from the Two Rivers just by how they are. Um Indicating that he's at least been to the Two Rivers before.
Yeah.
Uh and I just thought it was a very nice like moment, and it kind of redeemed Matt a little in the episode because he had been such an ass. Like, and he's
Yeah.
still not doing the best thing here by stealing from a dead dude, but he's at least like helping bury
Yeah.
him.
He's
And he's
definitely having a darker turn on this episode, but like, he hasn't like completely changed character. Like,
yeah.
it's
And we saw in the first episode he stole something from somebody, so it's kind of like
yeah,
okay, like at
he's
least
he's
just stealing
so
from a dead person. It's
he's
fine.
within the realm of what could be expected, but maybe on an extreme.
And then we have the point of the episode where I went, "What?"
There is a very creepy encounter with Rand and
And the
the
barmaid.
barmaid, and it gets very eerie very quickly. It made me extremely uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, well, it made me uncomfortable, but the moment that made me go, "What?" was when she reveals that she's waiting for Matt to get back because she has been
I
trying to get them alone this whole time.
Yeah, she says, I need you both.
Yeah, and like pulls a sword on Rand, and I was like, "Hold up! I just thought this lady was a barmaid."
No, the
Like,
the the other weird part, slightly before that, so there's like this whole thing where like she puts the moves on Rand, and Rand's like, whoa, no, sorry, I'm not interested. And she
oh
leaves, closes the door, and right before she leaves, she says, was it the hair? Closes the
yes,
door, and she's holding the braid, and she said, it makes me look too much like her.
yeah,
And then she
that was the moment.
re-enters the room and draws the sword.
Yep. And locks the door behind her. And that was the moment where I was like, what? I'm sorry. What's happening? What's going on? Um, hold
Which,
on.
you know, and I don't know if you came to your the conclusion I came to was that somehow she knew what Egwene looked like.
Oh, yeah, no, that's definitely what she was going for. And I just was like, what? What? Then we get
Yeah.
another scene with Tom and them, and we get back, and Rand, being a person of the Two Rivers, is like, well, I'm not just gonna wait for you to kill me, and starts like trying to bang on the door, shout for help, and she goes, yeah, that's not gonna happen. It would take 3 men to even move that door,
Yeah,
and
it's
no
like
one will
that.
hear you scream out here. And then Rand just hulks the hell out and
And
knocks
it's
the
just like
whole
he
door down.
blows it off its hinges. Like,
Exactly.
and then just starts mad sprinting through town. Like, dude's
Look
just
at it.
fucking barreling through shit.
And I love it because it's also on brand for Rand.
Yeah. Very much like a bull in a china shop of like, oh shit.
And I kind of had been classifying people a little bit in my head, like, Moraine is the mage, and Lan is the melee fighter. Uh
Yeah, he's the
Perrin's
knight.
he's the knight, and Perrin's the berserker, obviously, the
Yeah.
wolfish, animalistic berserker dude, and then uh Egwene might, I don't know, another mage. And then I was like, listen, if you're gonna tank Rand, you're gonna need to put on like 20 more
Uh,
pounds.
yeah, it's like you're gonna have to fucking beef up, and maybe let's get you a shield.
Yeah. Oh, but it was just kind of funny to see this because like he is skinny. He's a skinny looking
He is
farm
thin.
boy.
It was an interesting thing with the casting where Perrin's kind of the only big dude,
Mm-hmm.
but like all of them ostensibly are farmers of a kind and should kind of be muscly in a way.
Yeah,
But
but
you know, it's, you know, I don't want to, it is
it
what it is,
also
but you know,
it's also like, uh my husband's very thin, but he's super strong. So
strong. Yeah. It's
it's
not
probably
a
he just hasn't had as much food as anyone else, pretty
right.
much. But there is this really great moment when he's right before he breaks the door down where he hits it and the entire place shakes and the barmaid looks at him like, "Whoa, wait a second." He looks back at her and
It's that
just
moment
gives
of
her
just
this
like, wait a minute, maybe he could get out.
it's but what's great is he looks back at her too and has this look of like,
Yeah, he's
uh
kind of like almost equally surprised at his own
yeah.
strength. Like he was like, "Wait a minute, I didn't know
Um
I could do this."
yeah, exactly. It's just this like, "Oh, bye."
I
um
also love the moment where he's like running and Matt happens to pass by and Matt's just like, "What the hell's going on?" And all Rand says, "She's got my sword."
yeah.
Keeps running.
Poor Matt has no idea that I just paused on a very funny moment, but poor Matt has no idea what is going on right now and just starts booking it. Like even though they were just like arguing with each other and not exactly on the most friendly of terms when they left things off, he sees his best friend booking it and yells, "She's got my sword!" And he's just like, "Fuck this."
Right. It's pretty
Um,
great.
and I just appreciate it that felt very like friend familiar to me. Like I could picture that happening with us.
Yeah. It's very
Just
much like a comedic, like, you don't have to explain everything. If you just get the key points out, it's like, oh, okay, danger, let's go.
there's there's definitely been a few moments in the show where it's completely unintentionally funny, but just because I have that sense of humor.
Yeah.
Like I explained this after we watched the first episode, but I didn't bring it up at the thing just because it was such a specific moment. I was like, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but in the first episode, I burst out laughing when the Trolloc came into Rand and his dad's house because his dad just has this look on his face of, oh, for fuck's sake,
Yeah. Yeah, he
cracked
has
me
a,
up.
like, it's almost like it's like he was surprised, but it was more of the like, god damn it.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, well, this is how I'm spending my afternoon. Um, I thought it was so funny, but yeah, absolutely hilarious. And then the boys are saved by Thom,
Yep.
Thom.
Just call him Tom. That's what I always say.
And you see that she is talking about the dragon and confirms that Matt, and this is the part that I was talking about earlier, where Matt gets confirmation you are one of the five
Like,
potentials, and Matt also goes
you
five.
are important to the enemy.
Yes. And so I think that was the moment it really sinks in for him that like, oh, I am a part of this. I have
Right.
no choice. And then she dies very suddenly and graphically, thanks to Tom.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
and
Straight
I
up
just,
knife through the throat.
yeah,
Pretty brutal.
brutality.
I don't like, I'm
Um,
actually interested in how that works, where it's like, man, he really threaded, either he threw that so hard that it went through a vertebrae in her neck, or he threaded the needle and put it right next to her neck bone.
yeah, yeah.
Which is just like,
Um,
goddamn, dude, like, where'd you learn how to throw like that?
And there's a small El Dorado moment in there when they were like, "Where are you going?" And Thom goes, "We're going east, and you're coming with me." And Matt turns to Rand and goes, East is good. East is good."
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think there's a moment in the El Dorado movie where they say something similar. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
it's fine. It's fine.
That's good. This is fine. I just watched a knife go through someone's neck. Let's leave.
Right.
um, so I thought that was very funny. And then just a shout out to whoever did the transition of her blood turning into
I
the tree
was gonna
line.
bring that up. That is such a good
Whoa.
transition.
Um,
It's her blood spills out into the mud puddle, and then the blood, like the way it flows, turns into the tree line.
yeah,
So
that was
good.
very cool.
Clever
Uh,
and well executed.
yes, agreed. And then you have poor Nynaeve, who's just
Trying her best.
she's just living and trying to get her friends together and protect her friends, and she's just getting pulled into all this shit.
Yep.
They finally meet up with the Red Ladies, and they're like, "We found the guy who's claiming to be the fifth. They're the Dragon Reborn," and I think that's the dude from the first episode. I'm not 100%
Uh,
sure.
no, it's not.
Okay,
It's not. Um,
I couldn't tell.
yeah, no, they look similar, but no,
Oh, now I
it's
see
not.
it. Okay.
Yeah,
I, I only saw like a glimpse of his face the first time I watched it, and I paused it and I'm like, oh, that's definitely not him.
yeah.
Um, but
And we finally the blonde haired woman that we saw in the chase scene, we finally learn her name, which
oh,
I knew as soon as I saw her, but I was waiting for the name reveal. It's
hmm.
Leandrin Sedai.
Ah,
Yeah, she's
um,
important. Remember the name.
noted. Her cheekbones look like they could kill someone.
Dude, she like has some like Cruella de Vil vibes going off.
Really, and just like, are those? If those are your natural cheeks, ma'am, miss,
Dude, I don't
um,
even know.
goddamn,
But she just
I
has. Oh, go
she's
ahead.
got a striking face in
Oh
general,
yeah,
like very
no,
sharp features, which is again isn't it's not bad. I'm not trying to diss this lady or anything, but damn, she's scary
yeah,
looking.
like she catches your eye like real
Yeah,
quick. Which
yeah,
like so previously I was talking about like the Ajas and what they do, and Red Sisters hunt male channelers and kind of have like this disdain and this uh almost like a superiority type thing, and her face and her expressions, the way she carries herself, she exemplifies that perfectly. Like she
yeah.
very much
Also,
has the like I am the biggest person in this room.
yeah, definitely has that vibe. But also, I just looked up the actress's name, and no, dang, she just those are her cheeks.
Yeah. Yeah,
Damn, lady.
she's just got an imposing face.
Really does. Props. I will say she looks a little less terrifying with brown hair because it balances. She doesn't look as washed out, but the
The
blonde hair
the
on the pale
blonde
skin,
is
blue piercing
striking.
eyes. It's like, whoa, okay, a lot is happening here.
As my mother would say, they not pretty isn't the word I would use, but they are striking.
Yeah, yeah. She's very pretty with brown hair. I will say she goes into pretty, but like here she's scary. Love her though.
Yeah.
Looks
Yeah, no,
cool.
she's great.
Um,
That actress is doing a great job.
yeah. So I do want to state I'm a little disappointed if this guy is the fifth potential, just because I wanted it to be Nynaeve.
Fair. Very
I
fair.
did I wanted it. I want Nynaeve to have something nice. I want her to be. I want her to have a good time because she's just so cool. Um,
I've also been racking my brain, like I'm trying to puzzle out the reasoning for it, and you kind of reminded me of that there's this idea put out that there's like 5 candidates that they're
Mm-hmm.
like investigating, but when Moraine is talking to Lan about going to the 2 rivers, she says that there's 4 Taviran. And
Yeah,
I'm
so
trying
that's
to
why
figure out if there's a deeper meaning to saying 4 Taviran but 5 candidates.
yeah, I don't know. I think
I've been really trying to
specifically,
figure that out.
I think specifically she said 4 in the town. So maybe it was like, I know
Or
these
maybe I
4.
misheard it.
No,
It,
it
it
definitely she said 4, and then they talked about then
5.
the lady, the evil barmaid talked about there being 5. And that's
Oh,
when
that's right.
Matt was like 5 and
Yeah.
also me.
Yeah.
um
So that,
but
yeah, that's where that comes from. So yeah, I'm really curious about the discrepancy between 4 and 5. 4 Taviran, 5 potential dragon reborns.
yes.
That that is a
Um
puzzle to me that is haunting me so far.
oh, hopefully we get an answer soon. But the last thing I really wanted to say about the episode, before we get into the book stuff, is this was my favorite episode of the 3 I've seen so far. We haven't watched the 4th one yet. We're gonna do that and then record that podcast after. Um, minus some of the slightly boring stuff with Egwene and Perrin near the end, I was fine with it because they needed a little break. They needed a little rest.
Yeah.
They're dealing with a lot. I also noted that just to me, it seems that in the split, this is how it's split. It seems that there is political drama focused on Moraine, Lan, and Nynaeve, fighting and strength drama focused on Rand and Matt. So there's this conflict of personalities there. And then lore and magic drama is Perrin and Egwene right now. And it's cool that they kind of all get
That's
that
interesting. I
focused.
don't think I really picked up on that, but that is an interesting
Well, because
like theming.
We've got Egwene is learning how to channel kind of by herself now, but Perrin has this affinity with nature and the wolves,
Right.
and they kind of got picked up by a wandering troop of travelers, so it seems a little almost fitting. And then Rand and Matt are kind of more the like just brute strength. Matt seems to be
Yeah.
kind of more sneaky, I
Yeah,
guess.
they're kind of being accosted, and like there's obviously like a physical fight and physical
Yeah.
drama
But
happening.
also, like, Rand just magically had extra strength and broke down a whole fucking door.
Yeah.
And Matt seems to have an affinity for weaponry and shiny things. I mean, he's had a lot of weapons in his hands throughout the episodes. And then
True.
Moraine and Lan and Nynaeve seem to keep getting caught up in these political talks, these cultural, societal things going on,
Yeah,
like
like a
the White
conflict of
Cloaks.
interests kind of deal.
Yeah. Um, but like Nynaeve is the leader or the wisdom leader of the town, and Moraine and Lan are leading finding the Dragon Reborn,
Yeah,
but
they've
they're
been
also
the head of the
dealing
group so far.
and then they're also dealing with the White Cloaks, but also now we've got the other Aes Sedai, and there's like not a
A lot of
direct tension
layers.
there, but I do feel a slight tension when they showed up to the Red Cloak Aes Sedai. Um, and Lan was like, "Hey, we need you now."
Yeah.
They don't like me.
Um
um so that's where I am right now. That's kind of what I noticed picking up throughout this episode. But
okay.
yeah, that's all I have
Um
to say on the episode at least.
couple things before we get into like book lore potential spoiler area. I wanted to point out the cool continuing of symbolism and theme. The beginning where we're seeing what happened to Nynaeve when she's in the cavern of the pools and just becomes the ultimate badass and steals
Mhm.
the Trollocs sword and then
Oh,
proceeds to fucking like shove it in its spine.
oh, just
That's awesome. But the thing I wanted to point out is that they both go under the water and the blood comes up. the blood comes
Oh
up in the
yeah.
shape of the dragon's fang, that
Yeah.
yin and yang symbol.
One
So that
one
was a
thing
cool theme to come back.
one one quick note on that one also is her being smart and going, the only place I can hide is underwater
Yeah,
and
no,
dipping down. I was like, girl, you are so smart. I would have fucking died.
I also love so far I'm in love with the portrayal of Nynaeve, and I'll talk about that more in the book comparison section, but I I love her character in the show. I thought I wasn't going to like her, and I now she's like in my top characters so far for the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. I think right now my favorite characters Tom is definitely in the top 5, but I think
Whew, Tom is
it's
up there for me.
it's Lan. Still simping for Lan.
Everybody loves Lan.
Oh, Lan is
That's
so
not even
good.
part of the list. That's just assumed.
Yeah, this Lan, I don't care about. Well, I think I'm going to like Moraine when I learn more about her. But seeing as for the last 2 episodes, she's kind of been out of the fight, it's kind of like, all right, you're cool. I just don't know anything about you.
Yeah, we don't know a lot about her because she's kind of been out of commission. We have like the first half of episode 2 was the
Yeah,
most we learned about her, and it
yeah.
was very surface level stuff.
So it sticks out a little because in this episode, like, because we get that close interaction with all the other characters, it's now like, all right, we don't know anything about Moraine
Yeah,
comparatively. Or emotionally, I'm not as invested, but I think she's a really cool character. But it's Lan, Nynaeve, Moraine are my top. And then I get the feeling Tom will become one. But again, we just met him. And
yeah.
then
I mean, I instantly love him.
I just want to
That
protect
singing
Perrin.
voice. Yeah, no, Perrin's the one that's garnered the most sympathy of just like, oh, I just want to give you a hug.
I
Like,
know,
you're having a
like,
real bad time, man.
it's okay, buddy.
Um, couple of other things I wanted to talk about before book time is I love the traveling people. I
Mm.
know them from the books, and I love the way that they're portrayed. They're just fun. I really like the designs, like the the way the characters are dressed and stylized and their caravan. It's all really cool. I love how all of that looks and feels.
I want to point out that the main dude of those guys, or like the younger dude
Yeah,
of them,
the guy who like
dude,
teaches them how to do the grading.
dude's eyes are like
Piercing.
just
Piercing.
eyes so piercingly green. Like normally it's like blue eyes, are very
Yeah.
like, but this guy's like, oh, dang,
He like
I can,
looks at you and like you feel it inside of your head. It's really
yeah,
weird.
it's
You're like, "Oh
impressive.
god, you're looking at I feel like you know things about me that you shouldn't know by just looking at me."
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the travelers. Um they have a bunch of names, but I'll talk about that in the book section. And then I also wanted to I love the whole mining town and all of the the kind of contrast from the Two Rivers is this kind of jovial, nice farming village, and now we have the contrast of a new part of the world where like this is a dirty mining town filled with rough people that aren't going to be nice to you.
Yeah. It
um
definitely could feel that shift.
yeah. And then so I like the town. I kind of like how they uh portrayed everything there in that contrast, and then like the looming ominous feeling of the Aiel that was put in the cage and killed.
Yeah. Definitely
uh
a darker.
and then Tom's portrayal is way up there for me. I was very skeptical of Tom when they were announcing the casting,
Mhm.
and then the first 2 seconds he was on screen, I was like, okay, I'm in. I was wrong to be skeptical. He's good. 2 thumbs up. And
Um,
goddamn that singing voice. I wanted to bring that up
oh,
too.
yeah, very good. Everyone I've heard singing has been very good.
Pretty
But
good, yeah.
one thing I wanted to point out is I don't think. Oh, okay, he is listed. He's just not listed very high up. Sorry, I was looking at the cast list and I couldn't find Tom, but I was like, did they hide it?
He's a little lower on the list.
That's
Um,
fine.
and then the last thing I wanted to mention before book time is so the our first episode when we were talking about episode 1,
Mhm.
I was talking about Moraine mentions for Taviran, and I kind of gave a brief explanation of what Taviran is, and I'll recap. They are important people who have a large effect on the world around them passively, of like there's the butterfly effect, but their effect on that chain of events is much greater than regular people. So I wanted to bring attention to that Matt and Perrin, or no, Matt and Rand come to this mining town, immediately run into a Gleeman that has a now has a kinship with Matt,
Mhm.
and then they are rescued by this Gleeman, and he tells them to run with them, and when they ask him where he's going, coincidentally he is going east, which is the direction that everyone needs to be going.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is a subtle and very good indication of like the power of a Taviran, and that it's it's stuff that happens that seems coincidental, but it is
Mm,
not because they are Taviran.
got it.
So I wanted to point that out as an example of like how these serendipitous things that can happen are actually part of this idea of being a Taviran.
Got it.
And I think that's all I have before
Before we
book
go into the
time.
books.
Yeah.
All right. So if you do not want to learn anything about the books, again, there won't be any major spoilers that we talked about at the beginning, but we will go into more detail and little things might, you'll get a slightly more deeper look at the books. If you solely want to just be watching the show and listen to our dialogue, you can stop the episode here. Thank you so much for listening. But if you want more in-depth looks from the books, take it away, Gav.
So I don't have as much to talk about comparison this time around, because we're now getting far enough in the show where there's enough divergence between the story of the show and the story of the book that there's less things that I can compare one to one.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the story is changing, which I personally think is a good thing, because I feel like a show doing a one to one to the book would be very difficult, and then even if they tried to do that, I don't think they would be able to do it well. I feel like that's just a fool's errand at that point.
Mm.
So, and I already knew, because they announced ahead of time that they were making decisions that were going to be different things from the book, that the whole of the story is going to stay thematically the same, but how you get from point A to point B is going to be different.
Right.
But I brought this up on the last episode, that Tom's appearance is out of order with the book. Tom shows up in the Two Rivers and is part of that whole escape and gets split off with Rand and Matt. So it is actually interesting to see Rand and Matt on their own and then run into Tom and kind of make this decision to join him. I think that's interesting. Um I love the theming of the dragon's tooth uh
Oh, yeah.
that keeps showing up, which I'm guessing because they keep bringing it up, they're going to do a big thing with it in the show. Um, but that's also very important. But I also don't want to. There's some big things involved with that I don't want to spoil for you. They're not on your list of do nots, but I just think it's a fun thing. There's a lot of side characters in this portion of the story in the book that get introduced that but the way Robert Jordan wrote The Wheel of Time is that a lot of characters that seemingly feel like one-offs of like, oh, this is just a side character to help main characters go from point A to point B. In the books, because it's over such an extended time and just the volume of literature, a lot of these side characters actually come back and do important things that are relevant, or they have some sort of significance in the revealing lore and background information. So there is I'm having trouble remembering his name at the moment. But when Matt and Rand and Tom flee, they find a trader who runs a riverboat, and they accompany him. Now, what I think's gonna happen in the show is that they may find that riverboat now that they're all together and fleeing, that they'll find a boat going east. So we may still get that. So that happens, and then there isn't any of the trouble with Moraine. By the time people are out of Shadar Lan and Moraine are fine, and Nynaeve finds them. So there isn't this whole thing of finding the other Aes Sedai. So this is a complete divergence from the story, because Nynaeve catches up with Lan and Moraine, and then they immediately go into this quest of finding everyone else. So this is a full divergence, finding the other Aes Sedai and the captured Chandler. With Perrin and Egwene, there isn't this huge wolf chase type thing going on. There's some wolf thematics happening in the book, but they have a much more easygoing time of trying to find their way. And they still meet up with the traveling people, but there is an important character that has been left out that the show still has a potential to bring back, that is relevant to Perrin's story. And I won't say more than that, just in case the show does hit on that and it's just out of order. But there is the interesting thing is that there is the story overall, but the thing that Robert Jordan did that I hope that they communicate well in the show is that there are people that are considered main characters, and there are people who are less important than some characters, but the majority of the characters that are getting the time and attention have their individual stories. There is an individual story where parts of it don't necessarily apply to the rest of the world. They do in subtle ways, and all their actions affect the overall story, but you have this really cool, like, it's their personal story. It's almost like a fully defined subplot that I think is really cool, that like a lot of shows have to kind of do in the background. Like when you do storytelling, like oh, there's the subplot, but the only way you get that subplot is by like one or two scenes and offhanded comments.
Mm,
So I'm hoping with the way that they're splitting this and they're focusing so hard on key points that they're threading those subplots in so we get the true individual character stories and not just like changes in the character as the story goes on, if that makes
right.
sense.
I
Like
think
instead
so.
of
I
a
think that makes
gradual change, I would like to directly see the story that
Yeah,
causes the change.
I think that definitely makes sense more for TV than like in books, because I talked about this with a friend of mine, but like in a book, because you have so much control over what the reader sees, in quotation marks there,
Yeah.
um, you kind of can do more subtlety, right? So like
And
a
you also
book,
have more time to do it.
yeah. Um, so I talk about how like everyone or a lot of people don't like the Witcher books, which I understand. The Witcher is the Witcher books specifically, and to clarify for listeners, I haven't played the games at all. I plan on playing them, but I picked up the book once and just was like, oh, this is funny. I know it's a video game. I'll try giving the book a read. Turns out I love it. And a lot of people don't like it because the writing is so subtle. Because you have to infer how Geralt feels based on how he thinks about things and things he describes. So like I know that Geralt is madly in love with Yennefer because every time Yennefer comes up in the books, all he will talk about is how she smells, all the little subtleties. He talks about the little details. And we know he cares about Dandelion slash Jaskier. Fun fact on The Witcher, Jaskier is Buttercup in English. But when
Fun.
they originally translated the book, they decided Buttercup had a little too feminine of a feel to it, so they changed it to Dandelion. And that's why in the books he's called, and I think in the games he's called Dandelion, but in the show he's called Jaskier, because that's the actual name. Anyway, it was a mistranslation, a misunderstanding between the translators there. Um, but we know he cares about Dandelion because he pays attention to him. And people he doesn't care about, you get nothing from them. He's like, here's this dude. He exists. Like, that's it.
Interesting.
But, like, I
But you
know he
get
cares
way
about,
more context about Yennefer because he talks about it more.
he talks about her more. He pays attention. You get little details about her. He cares about Dandelion because he talks about how much Dandelion annoys him. So it is a lot more effort to read The Witcher than it is to play it or watch it. But because it's the medium is a book, you get that subtlety and you get the subtle character development. When
Yeah.
and this was a big issue I had with the show. I'm sorry, I'm not going to rant about The Witcher for this. I swear I'll ruin myself in. But I felt that the show completely ruined some of Geralt's character development that had such a big impact in the book because
It
because of how they did
lacked
the
those
show.
subtleties.
It lacked the subtleties and also just the way they set up character introductions was all wrong. Like in the actual book, Geralt and Ciri have a relationship. Like
Gotcha.
not a relationship, but like they have a father-daughter thing going on way before they meet in the show. Like by the time they
Gotcha.
meet in the show, they had already been father-daughter. Like
Like they already had like a connection, an emotional investment in each other.
exactly, and the show just didn't show you that at all. Anyway, so I get what you're saying. It is much easier in a book to show the subtleties, to show the developments,
And like individual stories versus the whole.
right? And so I feel like the difficulty they're having here translating the Wheel of Time books into a TV show is like, okay, we got to show everybody stuff.
Yeah, which I'll say like when I made that comment, I what everything that they've done so far is phenomenal. Like I feel like they're doing it correctly, but it may become one of those things where down the line where there's a lot more going on, I'll be interested to see how they manage the subplots with so much going on.
Right.
And then the last thing that, or unless you have anything, I have my capstone for the episode.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So the interesting, or one of the things that I find so endearing and interesting about how Robert Jordan, and then followed up by Brandon Sanderson, how the series and the storytelling was written, is that Robert Jordan has this unique ability to describe a situation or mention something that seems completely innocuous. I don't know if I pronounced that or used it in the right context, so I'll
No,
clarify
you're good.
that something that doesn't necessarily seem relevant, like it'll be something that a character sees, and then you kind of get a little bit more detail into that thing than you would think that it deserves. And it seems like this kind of, like, it comes off as world building, that like he just wanted to give you extra context to the world and how things are.
Right.
So it comes off as that, and you're like, oh, that's cool that I learned a little bit more about this like random thing. Like I learned about, like, I don't have a direct example, but like, oh, I learned about this one painting in this room. Like someone just talked about this painting, and then you'll kind of forget about it because you're like, oh, that was cool world building. And then like a book or two later, that thing comes back up, like it's referenced or somehow relevant to whatever's happening later in the story. And the same goes for characters. Like I mentioned, there are side characters that the first time you're introduced to them, it feels like a one-off, but like you get like their full name, and there's this like interesting in-depth, like, characterization, and it feels like a one-off. And then down the road they come back and you're like, wait, that's a name I remember. That was, it's like, that was the guy who was the captain of the boat. What is he doing here? How did he get here? And there's a reason for it to be there. And the last thing the very last thing that I'm interested, if they'll try and do something with this in the show, is that Robert Jordan liked to write things by multiple different perspectives, which in the first book you're getting the different perspectives between Rand, Matt, Perrin, Egwene, Moraine, Lan, and Nynaeve, and we're seeing that in the show where they're being split off to the group and you're getting different perspectives from these characters. But another thing Robert Jordan did was there were certain sections that were written from the perspective of none of the main characters. Like it was a person that they were like a side character or someone who is mentioned that is like part of the plot, obviously, but not in the spotlight at all, not even close to the spotlight. But they're an important delivery device for the plot. And sometimes you would just get these like portions where it's a character that you've never even thought about, like maybe they showed up and you didn't even think about, and now you're getting part of the story from their point of view. Right. Like as an example, like the captain of the boat, sometimes there's like a whole entire like couple of paragraphs, like a whole subsection of, now you're from the perspective of the boat captain and he's doing something, but it adds to the story overall. So I'm interested if they make an attempt to do that at all. And
That
I
could
would
be,
understand if they didn't.
yeah, that could be very interesting, but if done badly,
No one will understand it. It's like
it's
that's
kind
the
of like,
concern.
again, I'm comparing it to The Witcher because it's just on my head right now, but it's like how with The Witcher, what they did was they tried to tell three stories, but at different time points,
Yeah.
and no one understood what the hell they were doing. Like that was one of the biggest complaints when it first came out. Was like, what the hell is going on?
Like
And I
I
get why
feel
they tried that, but it was like, one, you kind of ruined one of the plots. Two, why?
yeah, I feel like if they did it in the Wheel of Time, they would the timing of it has to be right where it's like I'll go back to the example of the boat captain. Like, Rand, Matt, and Tom are on this boat, and it has a captain, and there's this whole thing, and you're learning, and then Matt, Tom, and Rand go off. They continue their journey. I feel like they would have to immediately cut to the boat captain right after they left so that you still have that context of this is a boat captain and then something needs to happen from the boat captain's perspective that's additive, or what they have to do is immediately follow up the next episode with something from the boat captain. But if you wait any longer than that, it's just going to confuse people.
Yeah,
Is what
if
I
it
would
isn't,
think.
for me, if it was more than just a scene or two, it would be too much.
Yeah, it'd have to be a very small thing.
Yeah,
Like
and
it'd be like,
I
yeah,
I would argue they really need to do that just um because the medium is now through television. It's like we, the viewer, are kind of viewing it from an outsider perspective anyway.
yeah. And that's why I said it. I completely understand if they don't even make the attempt. It's just something that Robert Jordan did in his writing that was a very unique thing about his storytelling that I'm just curious if they'll ever try it.
Right. We'll have to see.
I'm not begging them for the do it. I understand if they don't do it, like this isn't ruining anything for me. It's just a curiosity that I just like,
Right.
well, Robert Jordan had this quirky thing where side characters we saw their perspective, and I'm just curious if they'll try it.
Yeah.
But I think that's all I got for this episode. And I think this one's been our shortest one yet. We still broke an hour by a little bit, but I think we reeled it in. We're finding our sea legs. Back to the captain.
I I'm really stuck on this captain metaphor,
Dude,
aren't you?
I'm trying to remember his name. That's why I'm stuck on it.
Well, we haven't seen him yet if you're talking about someone.
Well, I'm only referencing him because I know it's in the book and it's bothering me that I can't remember his name.
Got it. But I think I just need to accept these are going to be hour-long episodes on this podcast.
I mean, yeah, the episode itself is an hour long.
Yeah.
So we're trying to like discuss an hour's worth of content in a succinct way and then express our feelings about it. So I think we're doing good though. Let us know if you think we're too wordy, like if we're
we take too long.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think we're doing passable. I'm not saying we're amazing at this, but we deserve at least a C. I'll put that out there.
We passed the class. We're just not passing with flying colors.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much everyone for listening up to this point. If you made it here, we will be watching and discussing the next episode soon. And we're gonna keep chugging along with these because I'm having a fun time just discussing it. So.
Yeah, no, this is great, and this like I've been waiting for this show forever, and then now having like having and learning about a platform in which I get to discuss this that potentially other people will listen to excites me. I love this.
I don't
But
even care if other people listen to it at this point.
I mean, I don't
I'm
care either. It's
having
just
fun.
fun to fucking talk about it in depth of like, especially
Yeah.
since it's been something that I like talk about to you and you just don't understand at all, and now you have a jumping point to actually
I
understand what I'm talking about.
I have some context. I did make an attempt to get through to read through, but it's one of those things where fantasy, especially fantasy, heavy fantasy written in the 80s and 90s for me, just everyone was kind of doing, and not that George R. R. Martin and Robert are similar.
People
There's
within
this
the genre.
people within the genre kind of have this way of writing that my ADHD brain just goes, I can't do it.
Oh, see, that's why I got into the audiobooks, because I'd be doing something else but then listening. Like I
I
would listen
tried.
while I was working.
I really can only do. I'm not very audio. Ironically, making an audio podcast. uh,
Fair.
uh, uh, but I'm not very well. I like listening to audiobooks. However, it needs to be a book I've already read
Fair.
because I will not remember anything that
Got
happened.
it.
Like it doesn't sink. Auditory stuff doesn't sink in. Um, very much so when I'm like watching something, I'll turn captions on so I can read along with the audio. I also apparently drive people crazy just in concept because if I'm watching an instructional video, I'll put it on times two. So maybe I could
That's
do the
funny.
audiobooks if I put the audiobooks on times two.
Maybe.
um,
Anyways, we should wrap
anyway,
up.
yes, you should.
Uh
Thank you again so much for
yeah.
listening.
If you liked what you listened to, leave a like. If you know want to ask us questions, give comments, tell us what you think about the show. Leave a comment. Hit me up with some fan theories. I'll talk Wheel of Time all day. And if you want to be sure that you catch the next episode when we put it out, episode 4, hit the subscribe button and make sure you turn on your alerts. That way
Yeah,
you can catch the next episode as soon as we get it out.
and do whatever the podcast Apple wherever we put this
There
equipment
might be
is.
other places. I don't know. We'll inform you somehow.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.